Evening, everybody. This is Dr. Hack, and it's time to study the greatest player who ever played this game, Akiba Rubinstein, in my opinion. Now, because of how important this information is for me to give to you, I promise to talk in a monotone voice as long as I can, so most people who come here fall asleep, because we need to keep this stuff secret. We need to keep it safe. Right. Also, this lecture, which isn't even a lecture, this is more of a game that we're going to play, is going to be aimed at intermediate to advanced players. If you're rated 1500 plus, you'll probably get the most you can out of this. If you're rated a little bit lower than that, you probably will get something out of it, but it won't be as much as the players who really need this information to win right now. Okay. Good. That's all behind us now. We can get to the good stuff. So the format of this game that we're going to play is going to be a guess the move game. And I will pause my voice briefly as I play each move for white before I play it. And what I want you guys to do is I want you to think about the move that you would like to play as white and then see if you get it right. And if you do, you can keep score if you'd like. How many moves did you get correct? And at the end of the video, you can even tell me how you did. I'd love to hear it. These are hard moves. These guys are great players. This is going to be excellent. Yeah. So here we go. So we're just going to buzz through the opening here. It's a Slav opening, Queen's Gambit. And we're not so interested in the very raw opening. We're interested in the strategy that happens coming out of the opening, which is something you can use again and again and again. Okay? And I'm going to show you the strategic mistake, which is right here on this move for black. And we're going to know why that's a strategic mistake by the end of the video and how you can then use it in your games. Okay? So, first things first. I'm going to talk a little bit here before we start getting to guess the move, because I want you to have a place to stand on when you start guessing. I want you to get the first moves good and right. Okay? So what I'm going to do in order to understand the deep strategy is I'm going to take the pieces off the board and we are going to just remove them. And you know what? I realized that I didn't go far enough in because the next few moves were to take these pawns. And we see the structure ends up like this. Okay. And if I take all the pieces off, then it looks like this. Excellent. So what we need to pull from this and understand is that these pieces, these pawns are across from each other, which means it's a symmetrical game. And in a symmetrical game, there's something very important that you do not do. And that is you do not change the pawn structure. Because the guy who changes the pawn structure, the player that changes the pawn structure, is the one who takes a disadvantage in the new structure. It happens every time. Here's what I mean. If white were to say, play this pawn forward, and these two were to trade, what would happen to the position? And I'm just going to act like a piece recaptured this, like a knight or something, and just rip it off the board. Okay. What's white left with? The isolated pawn, the pawn that can't be defended by other pawns. And that actually would have been true if we had tried to change the structure for black as well. If black had played a move like this one, and white had taken it, and then black had taken it back with the bishop that he surely got here, black would have ended up with the isolated pawn. The player who changes the pawn structure takes a disadvantage in the new pawn structure in symmetrical games. And what that makes the game do is it makes the game turn into this battle of the pieces. Who can get superiority with their army on one side of the board or the other or the middle? What can you do to really get ahead with just your pieces? And now I think that will give us a hint as to why this knight move was a strategic mistake. And it's not because of the knight. It's because by moving that knight there, he allowed these pawns to trade and this to end up in a symmetrical game. Because if it hadn't have been there, if that knight had not been there, the queen could have captured that back and it could have left the game in non-symmetry. So his mistake was letting the game go into symmetry. And so it's not really about this piece anymore. That's the piece that allowed it to go to symmetry. Now it's about this piece. And there's the problem that we now hopefully spot, which is black's going to have to change the pawn structure if he's going to use this bishop to play on this diagonal that he put it on. Otherwise, he is going to have to undevelop it and play it down the other diagonal. Let's see how Rubinstein takes advantage of that. He is the greatest player of all time. He knows, right? Okay, so here's where we start our guess the move. This is white to move. Go ahead and pause the video if you have to. Okay, if you said queen to b3, you are right. Now, we all see that this pawn is under attack and that it's hanging, and that may have been the reason why you chose this move. Rubinstein had a much deeper reason, okay? And it's because of the symmetrical structure. He wants to slow black down as much as he can. And by putting the queen here, we actually put some pressure on the b pawn, which makes the bishop harder to bring into the game later. It's going to cost black an extra move. He's either going to have to move the rook over, or he's going to have to move the pawn up, or he's going to have to defend it with a queen, right? He has to do something about this pawn before the bishop can leave. And that's one extra turn. And when you're trying to get ahead with your pieces, one extra turn matters. Black plays knight to f6. White to move. What do you do? Okay, if you said bishop to d2, give yourself another point. White's developing his pieces in a way that's consistent with the pawn structure. His pawns are pointing off to the queen side, and that means that his pieces naturally flow that way. Think about how hard it would be to get a bunch of pieces over to the king side of the board. One bishop at least can't reach there, and none of the rooks can reach over there either, because they can't get through the pawns. But if you look at the queen side and do that same exercise, every one of white's pieces naturally flows that way. They can get into the game through the queen side of the board, A, B, and C files. Black plays knight to e4. It's white to move. Okay, this one was difficult. If you got this one, give yourself a pat on the back. Rook f to d1. And the reason that this move was important, and maybe even one of the best moves, if not the best move in the position, was because it stops black's tactics. Let's say white had done something else. Let's say he had developed this rook. Okay, maybe to the c file. This maybe is a common idea that you guys had. The black bishop could then develop freely because we actually can't take the b pawn. If we did, we'd have problems with our material down in this area of the board. You'll notice that black could win material in two ways. He could take the bishop, and then when the knight takes him back, he could win this one. Or he could take this piece, and when it gets captured back, then he could take the bishop. So black is actually able to go up material, and he's able to develop his bishop with tactic. And so white moved his rook over to d1 because he wanted to stop that tactic. Interesting, right? Now when the bishop goes to g4, white has a free move. Now black didn't do that. He played knight takes d2. What do you capture back with? If you said the rook, you're exactly right. Because at the end of the day, the rooks have to get into the game, and maybe they're going to do that from the c file. And this brings white one step closer to making his rooks double on that file. It's a nice move. Black plays queen to d6. White to move. What now? All right. The rooks need to start coming to the c file. And we can all see that that's what's going to happen. These two rooks are going to come here. But which one first? I think the rook goes to c1 first. And if you said that, nice work. You get a point. Look at what happens if he brings the rook to c2 first. It gives black, again, that chance to develop with tempo. He gets to develop with tactic. We can't take the pawn because we'll lose a whole rook now. So that rook was in the wrong place, disastrously so. And the rook should go to c1 first. Okay. And now black plays b6. And Rubinstein's queen to b3 move, it is paid off. He got his turn. He made black waste this turn. Well done, Rubinstein, right? That's why he's the GOAT. Okay, now we need to figure out what to do. This is white to move. If you said rook to c2, exactly right. These rooks are going to double up and start to play down the c file of the board. Now I want you guys to take note of something that's about to happen. Okay? Look at this bishop and look at what color it's on. And that bishop that can't reach our war area of the board, it can't reach A, B, and C anymore. That means that all of the black squares on this side of the board are able to be attacked an extra time by white than they can be by black, just at the moment. Okay, let's see if that matters. Black plays bishop to b7. What do you do? White to move. This one is another very difficult position, but there is a best move here, and that is queen to a4. Now that one's very strange. If you got that one, you are mastery level stuff going on here. Because what white could have done, right? What most of us would have done perhaps is moved the rook onto the 7th row, because we know that rooks are really good on the 7th row. But if you did that, maybe black would be able to play a move like this. And we can't take the bishop because we'll actually lose our rook on the back row. We got a pin. And so now all of the rooks are going to actually trade off of the position. They're going to leave the board. And that's unfortunate because our rooks were definitely stronger than black's rooks. Now we go back to white's move. He played queen to a4. Why did he do that? It had everything to do with this pawn. Now if black were to try to trade rooks, the pressure to this pawn would be just enough to keep this a rook right where it was. So the queen would then not be able to take the pawn. So what he's done is he's tied this rook down to defense. What a move. Kind of amazing. And black plays a6. He's starting to figure out what he has to do to get this rook into the game, because he wants to trade him off. This is white to move. What do you do? And if you said rook to c7, good work. Yeah, there's still no way for the rooks to trade off. You'll notice there's just too much pressure here. So if black were to trade the rooks, we would happily trade them, and then we would take a free pawn. Very nice. And so black plays b5. Aha. White to move. Where are you going to move your queen? If you said queen to a5, again, you are right on. This is actually an amazing position when you start to realize that this bishop could have solved all those problems that he's having. All of those squares could have been attacked by any bishop along this diagonal or along this diagonal. White's winning in the strategy of the early game because this piece is misplaced in a symmetrical game. Ooh. Black plays rook to b8. What do we do? Okay. White plays rook c1 to c5. Now that's a very, very tricky move to find, right? And if you played anything else, let's say you played a move like pawn to h3, black would still have the opportunity to trade off all the rooks because, simply because this rook cannot leave its position without losing the back rook. So what he did in this move was he defended that back rook with something else. And I could have also played it to c3 and it would have done about the same thing, though it does get in the way of the queen there. Now that the rook's defended, now if he does something like this, we can just take the bishop. And if he does something like this, we can just take the bishop. It all works. There's so many tactics that come up. See, if he takes this one, we can take the rook. And if he takes this one, we can take the rook with check and then take the rook back, right? We got away with a free piece. So now black can't trade off the rooks again because the back rook was now defended. Well, these tactics are about to get real. Okay, so black decides to play rook to d8. This is a blunder on a big scale. You might be able to spot a way to take advantage of that. See if you can. This is white to move. Okay, so first of all, the reason why it was a blunder is because now the queen has pressure on the rook with one thing between them. And that means that if the white rook here ever moves out of the way and, let's say, removes one of those defenders, this is going to be a weak spot. There's only one thing left defending it, which is a queen. So the queen now can't leave her post or this tactic will happen and we'll take a free rook. So we go back and we go, well, how could we make that queen leave her post? What if we start to bring the next piece into the game? And now we understand that black actually can't take the knight, because if he takes the knight, then this tactic is going to go off. The queen will have to leave her post. She has to leave the defense of this rook. And when she leaves the defense of the rook, oh no, right? The bishop goes down. He can't take it back or we're going to get a free rook on the back row. Great Scott. So the knight jumped into the e5 for free, and it can't be captured. Whoa. So black goes bishop to f6. He has the idea in mind, perhaps, to play this pawn out of the way, move the bishop back, which is where it should be, right, on that side of the board. This is white to move. Right. If you said knight to c6, you got it. This is a tactic based off of the trapped queen. Again, this piece is really in a bad spot, isn't it? It can't move down this way, and it can't move down this way. There's no squares for it. And it can't move back. There's no squares for it. So black actually can't take the knight, because if he does, that queen comes under attack, and she is stuck. Checkmate. Black plays e6. White to move. Right. So I think a lot of players would play, to take a rook here. And I think that would be an okay idea. But if you're the GOAT, then what you do is you calculate everything. You make sure those rooks can't get away on the next turn. And then you take the time on this turn to play a move that you really need later on in those calculations. He played g3. Black to move, he plays rook to f8. Okay, if you said you take the rook now I think you're right on, because you can't let the material get away. So we take it, and black recaptures it. White to move. This one's worth 2 points. This is quite a calculation to get this right. If you said bishop takes pawn, you are correct. It's actually not that hard of a calculation to get the first part right, but getting the stuff that happens after this correct is absolutely bonkers, right? Because we can easily see that if he takes the bishop back, which he won't do, that we're going to get our piece back by just taking this and pinning the bishop to the rook. And our next move will be then rook takes bishop. We'll get the piece back. But unfortunately for people who just went that far and stopped, the calculation goes much, much deeper, because black doesn't have to take the bishop back. And in fact, in this case, he probably shouldn't, because he has a really nice move here, which he plays. I don't expect anybody to get the next move right. If you do, you better comment about it. This one's amazing. White to move. Okay, white played bishop to e8. When you throw your arms up in the air and you go, what is going on? But really what he's after is he just wants to make the king a little bit less safe. He saw an opening and he said, hey, this is worth a check. Okay, sure, you can take my rook, and maybe he will. And maybe I'll take it back. Let's see what would happen if he did that. He didn't do this. We would go into this particular version of it, and maybe the queens would trade. I think they might have to, because he's threatening a rook if the queen doesn't trade. And now we're threatening this pawn. And if we trade, white's in a rook endgame where he's got the queenside majority, and I think it's winning. Now, I'm not an expert at this stuff, but I'm pretty sure that white's got a big advantage here. Let's go back to the game. Okay, so black plays queen to f8. It's not a rook endgame. He's trying to defend his pawn here. And he realizes that the rook can't move because it's pinned to the queen. White to move. What do you do? All right, we're coming down the home stretch here. White plays rook takes bishop. And when the GOAT, the best player of all time, starts sacrificing stuff, he's already got it worked out. He's won this. Well, he knows it. We don't, right? We're like, what? What the heck is going on here? And of course, black says free queen. Woohoo. We all would. And then he takes a rook. I'm just going to go through this combination. You guys can get this one. Okay. And then the queen pops out. And now we have to figure out what to do with our rook at b8. White to move. Okay. He plays it to b7. I think most people would get that, because I think this pawn is really under attack here. And the black bishop has to move because it's under attack. It chooses to go here. Could have gone a couple of different places, but none of them save this pawn. This is white to move. and I may have tricked you there. I apologize in advance if I did. He plays the rook before he moves the bishop, because the bishop is helping the rook move between the two pieces and make the fork. And then he's going to take the pawn on the next turn. After the queen moves to b4, now he plays bishop takes pawn. And his very next move will be to take the bishop for free. And if you noticed in this final position that he actually wouldn't win if he hadn't have played g3, because this would be checkmate. What? Right? So he saw all of that from that position where he played g3. Wow. You can see why I think this was the best player that ever played. All that strategy, and then the calculation is there as well. And this is in the 1920s. Holy smokes. All right, guys. I hope you guys learned a ton from this. I certainly did when I studied this game. This is one of my all-time favorites. You guys have a good one. Take care now. Bye.